They mocked her scars at a diner table, until a quiet old man revealed the battlefield she came from, and everything changed. The air inside Willow's grill wasn't much cooler than the heavy heat outside. The AC had been gasping since Monday, and management hadn't bothered to fix it. So the staff adapted. Sweat-damp necks, glistening foreheads, and customers fanning themselves while sipping syrupy sweet tea. It was late June in the South, the kind of heat that makes patience evaporate and tempers hum just beneath the surface. Tiana Baines had been on her feet since 10:45, working the lunch rush with quiet efficiency, taking orders, refilling glasses, clearing plates before they stacked. She didn't make small talk, not rude, just reserved, polite but distant, efficient, invisible by design. But today, the heat won. She'd rolled up her sleeves, a rare choice. Her uniform blouse, pale blue and stiff, was always buttoned to the wrist, no matter how humid it got. But today, her forearms were exposed, and if you were paying attention, you could see it. The texture of burned but healed skin curling along her left arm, crawling under her sleeve again like a memory half forgotten. Table 3, by the window, was full. 4 guys in their 30s, work boots scuffed, jeans dusted in concrete. Local roofing company by their matching t-shirts. Off-duty, loud. The kind of guys who cracked jokes nobody wanted to hear, but somehow laughed loud enough for everyone to notice. Tiana approached, pad in hand. The guy on the end, blonde, crooked smile, mirrored sunglasses pushed on his head, didn't order right away. He was staring. "You burn yourself on a curling iron or something?" His buddy chuckled. "Nah, man. That's from throwing hands." Another added, "Breakup damage for sure." The last just shook his head, sipping his tea and grinning. Tiana didn't flinch, didn't blink. She took their orders, 2 burgers, tenders, extra fries, without pausing her pen. Nothing in her face moved, but something behind her eyes shut tight. Not pain, not rage, just a door closing. At the counter, Benny the cook watched her come back through the kitchen doors. "You good?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah." "You sure?" "Heard him say something." "Just let me in," she said softly. And Benny nodded, turning back to the grill. She grabbed the next ticket, kept moving, plates out, ice machine. Table 4 needed ranch, but table 3 wasn't done. Every time she walked by, another jab. "She tough, but look at that arm." "Bet her man don't ask questions." "What is that, a gang mark?" She ignored it, like she always did. At the grocery store, at the gas station, when little kids pointed and parents whispered apologies. A scarred black woman in a small-town diner. People made up stories before she ever said a word. But today wasn't just hot. Today, the laughter hurt in a new way. Because they didn't laugh like she was there. They laughed like she was a punchline, like she wasn't real, like her pain was something cheap to pass the time. Still, she kept going, even as something inside her tightened like a pulled cord, until someone else spoke. "You boys see battlefields, or just playgrounds?" The voice came from the counter. Low, calm, not loud, but the kind of voice that didn't need to be. The 4 men paused, not out of guilt, but confusion. Was he talking to them? The man at the counter turned slowly on his stool, like he'd already made up his mind. 60s, maybe older. Face weathered, jaw lined with silver stubble. Skin like sun-aged leather. A khaki shirt salt-stained at the collar. Forearms lean, lined with muscle, resting beside a cup of black coffee. No one knew his name yet, but he sat like a man who didn't fear much. The blond guy smirked, slouched in his seat. "You say something, old man?" The man sipped his coffee, set the cup down. His voice was even. "I said, you boys ever seen a battlefield? Or just playgrounds?" No answer, just awkward shifting. Behind the counter, Tiana froze mid-step, 2 club sandwiches in hand. Breath caught, shallow. Then the man turned to her, his eyes landing on her arm. That a Firehorse 7 tattoo? Tiana blinked. Years since anyone recognized that symbol. A black insignia, nearly hidden now under scar tissue. Most thought it was tribal or criminal. She'd stopped explaining it long ago, but he didn't wait. He rolled up his sleeve. Same tattoo, same unit. Faded but clear. Tiana's tray trembled slightly as she set it down, her throat dry. He gave a small nod, the kind that says, "I see you." "You were there?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Yeah," he said. "Kandahar, summer of 19. You?" She nodded. One of the roofers scoffed. "What's Firehorse 7? The man, Frank Delaney, though no one knew that yet, turned fully toward them, voice lower now, sharper. "Firehorse 7 was a convoy unit, 18 soldiers, 5 Humvees. We were ambushed en route Bolo, fuel depot. IED took out the 3rd truck." He nodded toward Tiana. "She was in that vehicle. I wasn't. I was in the 5th, but I saw what she did." He locked eyes with each man. She pulled 2 men out of a burning Humvee, while her own arm was on fire. The table went silent. She passed out 10 feet from the bumper. Shrapnel wounds, smoke, broken ribs, but 3 men lived because she didn't freeze. The diner was dead quiet. Nothing but the hum of the fryer. Frank turned back to her. "I never forgot that day, because someone else didn't freeze." Tiana looked down, cheeks burning, not from the heat. Frank sipped his coffee, then looked toward booth 3. "You all done laughing?" The blond guy stared at the table, said nothing. Didn't need to. Behind the counter, Benny was frozen. The young hostess stood still by the soda fountain. Tiana stepped into the kitchen, stopped, fingers pressed to her temples. Someone had remembered what she'd tried so hard to forget. The clang of metal brought her back. She exhaled, grabbed the next 2 plates. Booth 3 was silent. Frank hadn't moved, just sat there, coffee cooling. The men slumped now, picking at fries. Only the blond one still tried to act normal, his foot bouncing anxiously beneath the table. Tiana kept moving. Then, "Hey, Baines," Frank called softly. She turned. "You mind if I tell them the rest? I figure if they're gonna laugh at scars, they ought to know what they're laughing at." She didn't answer, just paused. That was enough. Frank turned back to the 4 men, voice steady. No drama, just wait. It was July 19th. We were weeks from rotation, thought we were safe. That's when bad things happen. He looked at his hands. Route Bolo had been cleared days earlier, but that morning, 2nd Humvee hit the plate. Explosion, instant fire. Pause. 3 dead. Jackson, Limit Dawson. Tiana was behind them. Most freeze. She didn't. Frank continued. Described the chaos, the heat, the smoke, the bullets, and how she ran through all of it to save 3 lives. Then he pulled something from his wallet. A photo, faded, frayed. 5 soldiers smiling wide in the desert sun. "That's her," he said, pointing. "Second from the left." Tiana looked away. "I only show this to people who think they know what pain looks like." He folded it, put it away. One of the men mumbled, "We didn't mean disrespect." Frank didn't blink. "Yeah, you did." The man flinched, said nothing. Frank turned back to his coffee. "Costs $0 to keep your mouth shut when you don't know what you're talking about." A whisper behind him. "Amen." Tiana walked over to the coffee pot, refilled a mug, set it in front of him. "On the house," she said, voice tight but steady. "You still in?" he asked. She shook her head. "Out since 20. Medical figured. You carry yourself like someone who's done carrying." She smiled faintly. Frank sipped the new cup. "I meant what I said. A lot of us never forgot what you did. I know Burgess didn't." Her face shifted. "He made it?" "Lung damage, but yeah. Works admin now. DC keeps your photo on his desk, or so I hear. And that nearly broke her. She swallowed hard and turned away before anyone could catch the sting in her eyes. But something shifted, not around her, but deep inside. Tiana didn't cry. Not there. Not in the middle of a shift. Not while the scent of hot grease and vinegar still lingered from the coleslaw tray. She just kept moving, wiping counters, resetting silverware, running her thumb along the edge of a chipped ketchup bottle like everything was normal, even though everything wasn't. Willow's grill had gone quiet. The usual chatter dulled to a hush. Even the country music playing in the back had been turned down. Booth 3, the roofers, were still there. But none of them touched their food. Burgers sat cooling, fries wilted on the plates. Every now and then one would glance up as she passed, only to look away fast, like they'd just seen themselves for the first time. The blonde one, the loudest, finally pushed his plate aside like it had turned bitter. At the counter, Frank Delaney still sat sipping his coffee, watching the street outside. He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. A few customers left early, quietly. No commotion. But the air inside felt different now, like something heavy had been put back in place. Uncomfortable for some, but necessary. When Tiana dropped the check at booth 3, she didn't look at them. "It's all there," she said, setting the receipt down face first, then turned without waiting for a reply. But one of the men, the quiet one with the beard, spoke up softly. "Miss, we didn't know." She paused. "You didn't ask." He nodded, swallowed hard, and didn't say another word. They paid in cash, crumpled bills, a couple 20s, some small notes folded unevenly. But beneath the stack, something else sat. A clean napkin, one of the good cloth ones, and in thick blue ink from a waitress's pen, someone had written, "We're sorry. We were way out of line." Respect folded beneath it was a $100 bill. Tiana stared at it longer than she meant to. She didn't know what bothered her more, that it came from guilt, or that it took Frank Delaney's voice to make them finally see her. Still, she pocketed the money, not because she needed it, but because for the first time they saw something other than just a scar, even if only for a moment. Sometimes, that's enough. The rest of the shift crawled by. Afternoon regulars drifted in. 2 truckers from the highway, a mom and her toddler, an elderly man who always ordered tuna on wheat every Thursday. Life didn't stop for moments like that. It never did. At 3 o'clock, Tiana clocked out. Her shirt stuck to her back, and the thin layer of foundation she wore had long since surrendered. She peeled off her apron in the back, hung it behind the door, and grabbed her backpack. As she stepped outside, Frank was standing near the entrance, arms crossed, waiting, not in a way that pressured, just like a man in no rush. "You off now?" he asked. "Yeah." "Need a lift? Too damn hot to be walking." She thought about it. Her cousin was on her way, always 10 minutes late, but Frank's offer didn't feel invasive. It felt kind. "Thanks," she said, "but I'm good. I appreciate it, though." He nodded, then reached into his back pocket and pulled out a business card. No fancy design, just his name, a number, and 3 words. VFW, Post 1739, Salisbury, NC. "We meet on Wednesdays," he said. "Usually just coffee, some complaining, and half-decent stories. You ever feel like stopping by? We're there." She took it. "Maybe," she whispered. He tapped the brim of his cap and walked off, slow but steady, like a man who knew how long it took to get where he was going. Tiana stood still, card in hand. For some reason, her legs suddenly felt heavy. She looked down at her arm, at the scar, at the faded tattoo. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like something to hide. But maybe the bigger question wasn't what others saw. It was what she was willing to see in herself. Her apartment sat above a laundromat on Brookline Avenue. just 3 blocks from the diner. The floors creaked. The rent was cheap, but it was hers. The walls were bare, except for a few framed photos from before Kandahar, a wilting plant she kept forgetting to water, and a couch that once belonged to her aunt. She kicked off her shoes by the door and dropped her bag beside the chair. The card from Frank was still in her pocket. She took it out, looked at it again, then stuck it to the fridge with a pizza shop magnet. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes that helped. Sometimes it didn't. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Her arms still stung from the heat, the roll of her sleeves pressing creases into the scar tissue. But she didn't care. Let them show. A knock broke the silence. 3 soft taps, then a pause. She opened the door without asking. Only one person ever came without texting. "First girl," said Raina Elkins, stepping in with a grocery bag. "I brought that honey lemon tea you like, and if your fridge smells like last week's sins, I'm throwing stuff out myself." Tiana gave a faint smile. "Hey." Raina studied her, eyes narrowing. "You good?" "I'm fine." "Uh-huh. You always say that. But you've got that post-shift stare again. The eye-swallowed glass for 6 hours look." Tiana turned back to the kitchen. "Some guys made jokes about my arm." Raina's face hardened. "They didn't know?" "I don't care if they thought it came from a dragon bite. You don't laugh at people's pain." "Someone said something?" "Yeah. Shut them down hard." Raina stepped closer and gently took Tiana's wrist, examining the faded ink under the scar. "Someone from the unit?" "Yeah, older guy. Said he was there. Same tattoo. Firehorse 7. What was his name?" "Frank Delaney." Raina's eyes widened. "Wait, Sarge Delaney? Logistics guy? Always 2 steps ahead?" Tiana nodded. "He gave me a card. VFW Hall. Wednesday meetings." "You gonna go?" Tiana didn't answer right away. She poured another glass of water and dropped onto the couch. Raina sat beside her, curling her legs underneath. "I don't know," Tiana said. "Part of me feels like it's too far behind me. Part of me feels like I never really left." Raina didn't speak. Then, "Do you ever talk about it? Like, really talk?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't fix anything." Raina stood, set the tea box on the counter, then came back. "It doesn't have to fix it. Maybe it just gives it somewhere to live." They sat in silence. Tiana glanced at her arm again. The shape of the scar had faded, but it would never disappear. That night, she stood under the shower for a long time. Let the hot water run until it turned lukewarm, then cold. She stepped out, towel wrapped tight, and stared at the mirror. Ran her fingers over the tattoo. Maybe. It was time to stop pretending it wasn't part of her. She pulled the card from the fridge and placed it next to her keys. She hadn't said yes, but she hadn't thrown it away either. She folded the flyer and tucked it into her apron pocket. "I'll think about it," she said. As the week wore on, something inside the diner kept shifting. The way people looked at her, the way the silence sometimes said more than the words. One afternoon, a group of teenagers sat tucked in the corner booth, whispering and passing around a phone. They weren't loud, but they kept glancing at her. Finally, a girl, maybe 16, stood and walked over. She held out her phone. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Is this you?" The video was grainy, shot from a strange angle, but there was no mistaking it. It was Tiana, seated at a folding table at the VFW. A cup of coffee in front of her, telling a piece of her story. Someone must have recorded it. She hadn't noticed. Tiana looked at the screen, then at the girl. "Yeah," she said. "That's me." The girl smiled. "My uncle's in the army. He told me about Firehorse 7. He said you're brave." Tiana gave her a soft, tired smile. "Tell your uncle to stay safe." The girl nodded and scurried back to her friends. Tiana went back to pouring tea, but her mind lingered on that word. Brave. It didn't feel like her. She didn't see medals or grand moments. She saw chaos, burn cream, months of silence, a body that healed in pieces. But maybe brave wasn't how you felt. Maybe it was just choosing to show up, again and again, even when no one noticed. Just when she thought she was beginning to understand what the town saw in her now, someone younger, much younger, asked a question that pierced deeper than anything else. It was a slow Monday. The lunch crowd had thinned to regulars with newspapers and refillable coffee cups. A ceiling fan turned overhead, lazy and ineffective. Still, no one complained. Tiana moved from table to table, steady and composed, the hum of the diner rolling on around her. Then the bell above the door jingled. A woman walked in, early 30s, holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 7, thick pigtails, bright white sandals, and a Hello Kitty backpack bouncing with every step. "Sit wherever you like," Tiana said with her practiced smile. They slid into the booth by the window. She brought menus and a glass of water. Just as she turned to walk away, the girl looked up, big-eyed, curious, innocent, and pointed at Tiana's arm. "What happened to your skin?" Her voice wasn't cruel, not mocking, just honest. The mother froze, horrified. "Brielle," but Tiana gently raised a hand. "It's okay," she said. She knelt beside the table, resting her elbow so the little girl could see. "These are burn scars," Tiana said calmly. "I got them a few years ago." The little girl squinted, thinking. "Did it hurt?" Tiana nodded. "Yeah, a lot. Did you cry?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Not at first, but later. Yeah. Did someone do it to you?" The mother looked like she might cry, but Tiana shook her head. There was a fire. I went in to help someone." The girl blinked. "You went into a fire?" "Yeah." "Why?" Tiana smiled gently. "Because they needed me." There was a pause. Then the little girl reached out and touched just under the edge of the tattoo. "Is that a picture?" "It's a mark," Tiana replied. "It shows where I used to work. A team. We all had the same one." The girl tilted her head. "Are they still your team?" That one hit different. Tiana looked at the girl's mother, who sat in silent gratitude, then back at the child. "I think they always will be," she said, "even if I don't see them much anymore." The girl grinned. "That's cool." And just like that, she turned back to her coloring book. No judgment, no discomfort, just a truth absorbed. As Tiana walked back toward the counter, something settled in her chest. Not heavy, not painful, just settled. Kids didn't ask to judge. They asked to understand. And somehow, in her simplicity, that child had given Tiana something no adult ever had: permission to own her story. Later that day, Raina walked in and immediately noticed something was different. "You look like someone bought your coffee and told you your scars are trending," she joked. Tiana laughed. "A little girl asked about my arm today." "Oh no. What did she say?" "Everything adults are too afraid to." They sat at the counter, Raina stealing fries from someone else's plate, and for the first time in weeks, Tiana laughed, and it didn't feel like armor. It felt real. That night, Tiana opened the drawer in her nightstand and pulled out an old photo. Kandahar. 5 people in dusty uniforms, sunlight bouncing off a helmet. She was in the middle, smirking faintly, left hand bandaged, arm in a sling. She stared at it for a long time.
Then slipped it into a frame, because sometimes it takes a child to remind you your pain isn't something to hide. It's something you survived. That Saturday, she returned to VFW Post 1739, not because she had to, not even for them, but because she was ready. This time, she didn't sit in her car debating it. She walked right in, tray of store-bought blueberry muffins in hand. "Brought muffins," Frank said, grinning. I owed you one, she said, setting them down. Frank poured a coffee and sat beside her. You know you don't have to keep coming to impress us. I'm not, she said. I'm coming for me. He nodded. Nothing flashy, just approval in the way only people like him could give. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small patch, dark green, black stitching. A flaming horse. Fire horse 7, he said. This yours? Was, he said, but I think you've earned it more than me. Tiana turned it over. It was heavier than she expected. You carry this around every day. Not because I need to, he replied, because it reminds me who I've been. She blinked back something sharp in her throat. I'm not sure I've learned to carry it right. You're here, he said. That's a start. Later, when the group circled up for check-in, Elsie asked if anyone wanted to share. For once, Tiana didn't wait. Twice this week, she began slowly, someone asked me if the people I serve with are still my team. Silence. Listening. I said yes. But I've also realized something else. I've been carrying this like it's punishment, like surviving means I owe some kind of debt. A few heads nodded. I don't want to carry it like that anymore. I want it to mean something. Elsie smiled. That's the trick, letting it be more than weight. Frank raised his coffee. I'll drink to that. Afterward, as they mingled around warm cookies and weak coffee, Tiana laughed at one of Brig's bad jokes, and it came out full, genuine. No mask, no apology. That following Friday, the forecast said 95 degrees and rising. At 6 a.m., Tiana stood in front of her mirror, already dressed. This time, her sleeves were gone. She wore a neat short-sleeved blouse, the same light blue as before, but no more hiding. Her scarred arm was fully visible. The melted skin, the tattoo, the stories written across her body. She didn't wear makeup to mask it, didn't shift to find a better angle. She just stood still. No speech, no ceremony, just a quiet choice, not to hide. At Willow's Grill, the usual clatter filled the air. And then, silence. Not cruel, not mocking, just surprised. Benny, the cook, gave her a long look, then a slow thumbs up. Mr. Penley from Boo 6 glanced at her arm and said, Good for you. A teenager at the counter smiled awkwardly. Cool tattoo. Even the roofers came in, quiet and respectful, leaving behind a folded tip and a nod. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was real. By 2:30, the lunch rush had faded. Tiana stepped outside, glass of water in hand, and let the sun hit her bare arms. It didn't sting like it used to. It felt like something earned. Her phone buzzed. A text from Frank. Got your picture from Elsie. Looks like freedom. She smiled. Feels like it. I'm gonna speak next month. Full story. I'm ready. Frank replied, You already have been. She leaned back against the warm brick wall, arms crossed, not to cover up, but to feel the sun on her skin. The scars were still there. The past hadn't vanished, but neither had she. She walked past the framed photo that evening and didn't stop, didn't stay, didn't need to, because she had tomorrow's shift in her bag, muffins in the fridge, and a speech she was finally ready to write. And if you're still listening to this, maybe there's something you've been hiding, something you've convinced yourself you have to carry alone. Let Tiana's story remind you. You don't have to. There's strength in showing up. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen.